I just love how in committing to sharing in this new podcast way, new, old, I've done it before, because I've committed to myself in this way without forcing it or pushing it. It's like something shows up every week that's like this light bulb moment, this mic drop, that's asking, that's begging to be felt and experienced and then shared. So here I am again, getting to record this. It's been like, I've done 3 weeks in a row. I'm not promising I'm going to do every week. And yet it seems to be showing up in that way. Fascinating to me. So this episode is about sacred economics. And this is fascinating to me. So if you have heard of Charles Eisenstein, he's just this brilliant thinker of our day. He's a visionary who really sees the potential for living and communing in a different way, in a way that is life affirming, is sustainable, is focused on people and community rather than growth and expansion. So, and you know what, I'm just going to mention that for a quick moment because that feels really important. Because one of the things that I quickly became disillusioned with in terms of the whole like self-help, personal growth, development sort of thing is this intent focus on growth and expansion. And now I don't mean that we don't evolve. Of course we evolve. Of course we're shifting and changing. But it's almost like we've applied this concept of like continual expansion, getting more, being more, having more from economics, which I'll get to in a moment, to like personal development. And it's such bullshit. It completely undermines the truth that we are inherently enough as we are. We are whole and complete in this moment, and there's nothing that we need to do or change or shift or be in order to be worthy of that, in order to be worthy of the magic of life that is available to us in every given moment. If we just pause for long enough to be in this present moment, we can look around, we can feel and experience that everything is conspiring to love and support us. Now I can talk about that in a really tangible way, like the chair that I'm sitting on, the room that I'm in, the trees outside, that provide oxygen. But it's so much more than just a transactional relationship of like, I'm getting this from you. It's this inherent sameness. It's this unified field that we are a part of. And that is what sacred economics is all about. So let's talk about the word economics, because I think that will really help us to untangle this and then move into a space of true possibility. And I'll also share, where some of my hangups still are and like what's really feeling kind of like uncomfortable in me, still a little bit irritated there. So this word economics, I was just looking it up. Let me find it. So this word economics comes from the ancient Greek word oikonomia, which means household management. So oikos means household, and nemin, which means management and dispensation. So our modern day culture has come to associate economics with specifically finances. So money, it's seen as the trade of money, but this is not where it came from. This is not what economics meant. And so when we're talking about, sacred economics, it's just a completely different thing, but it holds the root of it. It really takes it back to its origins and the true meanings. So let's talk about that, the household and managing that. There wasn't necessarily the need for finances. There wasn't the need for a trade of money. In fact, a lot of it was a trade or bartering of services. I have this, and I give this to you. And it's quite subjective, even in terms of the value that we assign to it. Well, if it's not something I need right now, then I don't really have much to give you because I really need this over here right now. And that just becomes more of a it's an inherently supportive system. And so that's really where economics came from. And then moving beyond just that, like the trade and bartering, there's also gift cultures where we simply give of ourselves because that's what we do. Because not only is doing so good for me because it helps you and that I know I'll receive in return, that's obviously inherent in it, but because it's good manners, because I am you, because we are unified. And maybe that language wasn't always used in terms of like truly understanding that, but there are cultures to this day that simply are about giving of themselves and contributing to the whole without this expectation of direct return. And that excites me a lot. And it's fascinating to me because, going so far back in terms of my own work life, I started Wellness Within when I was quite young. I was 23 when I started the larger business. And I was full of like hopes and dreams, and it was just really in that space of true and open possibility. And if I had it my way, if money wasn't a thing that I felt that I had to manage or dictate, like if somebody was funding the project for me, or I had community funded it or something, I would have given everything away. And in fact, looking back on the situation and the experience, I basically did that. So I didn't take an income for 10 years. Now, that's not really like the essence of sacred economics. So I just want to like highlight that right away. Sacred economics doesn't mean that you don't receive. In fact, the two essential components of sacred economics are giving and gratitude. And so that means that you must receive. It doesn't have to be direct from the person that you give to, but rather it needs to keep that flow of reciprocity going. And I just love, so Derek Rydell wrote this book called The Abundance Project. And in it, he talks about abundance being this circuit. And we connect the circuit by balancing giving and receiving. And if we don't connect it, if we don't balance it in some way, we've got like a really lopsided circle that isn't actually connected. It's not allowing the currency, or the flow of abundance to move. And then he talks about how wealth in this kind of perspective is the expansion of those two parts. And so if I'm looking at sacred economics, it's similar. So if we can expand that, we expand our capacity. I love that. Like there's all of these words that are associated with electricity. So we expand our capacity for both giving and gratitude, for generosity and gratitude. And so it's not so much about accumulation, right? But if I'm in a position to give financially, then I give financially. If I'm in a position to give of my time or my energy or my gifts, I give that. And here's the big one. I don't block what is so freely given to me. And that's the big one for me. So that's where one of the places where I feel quite challenged still, and I'm learning to receive that. But there's still this part that's like, because I was brought up in this monetization system of applying a monetary value to everything rather than it being a gift or a barter, and assuming that if I receive something, I have to give something back in that moment. So because I grew up in that, it's a bit hard for me to untangle it, and I'm working on it. So yeah, I notice, like, even when a friend so generously gives of their time and energy, it's like there's still a part of me that clenches a little bit, and is often afraid to ask when I need help, whether it's financial or otherwise. So there's part of the unlearning that needs to happen for this to even take place. And I recognize that I'm in a privileged position right now to be able to explore this. So I can't say that I'm swimming in it financially. We're kind of just getting by in terms of meeting our needs. But what I do know, because I'm not needing to compromise, maybe compromise isn't the right word, but I can choose to test this out in certain ways. So I have a business, but I've always just wished it wasn't a business and it was more of a vehicle for giving, for providing, a vehicle for my medicine, for my gifts. And yet I always thought I had to like fit it into this like structure of, okay, it looks like it's a business, and it's a corporation, so it has to look like this. And so I have the privilege to be able to explore this in my business right now. And I might have to stop calling it a business because that word kind of shifts the energy for me in an uncomfortable way, or perhaps it's redefining what business could potentially be. What I envisioned at the beginning of this whole journey of business was just this free exchange, this understanding that if I give freely of myself, that is value enough for me, and that what comes back is simply going to come back. And perhaps I need help here, or you need help there, and it's just this really beautiful opportunity to co-create and to circulate that currency. So let me find I've got some information I wanted to share about sacred economics, because I think that's really valuable. So I was looking up again, I started with Charles Eisenstein's work and exploring that. And then I got this idea of utilizing a donation-based system within my business in terms of an offering that I had. And so now I'm exploring, like, how else can I bring this into my space, into my work, into my life? And rather than just kind of going whole hog on it and like changing everything to that, I'm feeling it out. And so I'd like to share a bit more about the core principles so that there's this understanding, this shared understanding of what it means. And so the core principles are that it's gift-based exchange. So there's no set price and no transactions in the traditional sense. So I know I recorded, I don't think I've recorded a podcast about this yet, but I shared how community can't be built around a business, and it can't be built around like one or two people, because that makes it necessarily a transactional based relationship. And so this is like a shift into a gift-based exchange. And, I can feel this part of me that's like, but then will I be taken care of? If I give so freely of myself, can I trust? And that's the key word. Can I trust that I will be taken care of? And I've already started to notice the places where I start to clench or where I start to recoil. And I offer myself some grace in that space, because my my commitment to self, my practice is to remain open. And so, okay, core principle 1, gift-based exchange. Core principle number 2 is trust and reciprocity. So this is the piece, right? Trusting that generosity will flow in through this circuit. And we could say in both directions, but it's so much more than that, because you might not receive the reciprocity directly from the person that you give it to, that you give generously to. Perhaps they then go and offer that to somebody else in a different way, in a unique way, where they need help. And it becomes this biological system of giving. And the third principle is that it's a move away from scarcity. So I invite you to even just consider for a moment what kind of choices you make out of scarcity. So I can tell you with all honesty, the choices I make out of scarcity are really terrible. And even just sharing part of my personal experience in the last few months. Actually, let's go back the last couple of years. So for a while there, I was doing quite well financially in my business. My meditation and breath trainings were doing so great, and I was really enjoying my work. And then something shifted, whether it was in me or the market or whatnot, and I wasn't being financially supported by that anymore. To the point where I actually chose to close that business, and then I opened a new business. In hindsight, I wouldn't have opened a second business. I simply would have, allowed that to flow through me in a different way. But, so that's kind of the experience of scarcity that I was having, is like, oh, there was money here, there was financial flow here. But what was happening is, I stopped giving in the ways that I needed to, like from my heart. It became more of an obligation. And then I also stopped the piece of gratitude. I stopped asking for help. And what I can see in reflection is that I was being called into an expansion of wealth, as in relation to how I just shared it with what Derek Rydell said in the Abundance Project, is like this expansion. So I was like giving, but in a way that wasn't aligned with me, and then not receiving anything. So like the circuit was broken. I was attempting to expand the giving, but the receiving was like very minimal. And so like nothing was moving through that circuit. And so abundance was not felt. And that's actually the time I'm remembering back to this moment when my partner Matt and I chose to leave the land that we were on, where we were, excited about starting a retreat center. Like there was these big, beautiful dreams, but we didn't involve community. We didn't bring in people who were willing to help and give freely. And frankly, I just wasn't in a place where I knew how to, or I could choose to receive in that way. And again, can't really build it around two people. So it needed to have a different structure altogether. And so, over the last few months, I had been looking for a job, like outside of the work that I do, the heartfelt offerings. And so fascinating. I love how the universe speaks. And in the moment, it can suck. Like it's quite challenging and frustrating. And then the perspective drops in and you're like, oh, I get it. Thank you. And so for me, because like I was so highly qualified for like a lot of these jobs, I was like, I can't believe I'm not getting I got 0 calls, 0 interviews for any of these jobs. And I was like, I knew I would be such an asset to that company. But thank goodness, like, thank you, Spirit, for having my back and recognizing that that's not what my heart was asking me to give. I would have been like fitting myself into this space in order to simply gain financially. And so now I'm in a place and a willingness. I'm in the space of willingness to explore what is possible if I simply give. If I simply give of my heart what I'm being called to give, whether that's work or time or effort or energy, whatever it is, and partnering that with the willingness to receive, receiving financially, receiving support in whatever ways it shows up, receiving lessons and whatever is needed. And it's challenging. It's still challenging. I just recently put out a meditation offering and shifted it like drastically. Like I dropped the early bird, I dropped the concept of launch, and I just totally shifted to this space of open donation. So a donation-based approach. And I'm considering doing this with all of my stuff. I'm just feeling it out a bit, but I can tell you it's already going to work. And the reason I know that is because I already had somebody who is saying, wow, like this is perfect timing for me. I really appreciate the way that you're doing this, and here's some money. And they could have said anything else. They could have said, and I'm going to pass this knowledge, this wisdom on to whomever. And obviously there's a part, that's still living in this space, in this world. Like I'm traveling soon. I want to be able to use some money to travel and to do these other things. So I do still want to receive in that way. And now I'm open to receiving in other ways also. So I'm open to what the universe has to share. And there's this beautiful thing that happens when you signal to the universe that you're ready and you're willing and you're open to receiving. You become this conduit, right? We've already been talking about this, like the conduit for the flow of abundance. And it's not only that, like between people, but it's the human and the more than human world. We become inextricably connected to the more than human parts of this world, animals, plants, inanimate pieces or parts, ancestors, spirits, however you want to like feel into that for yourself and what that means to you, going across dimensions. Like it's quite beautiful what's possible when we don't limit ourselves to one focus of the flow of abundance. And kind of an aside, and I'll keep it short because it can get pretty lengthy if I go down this road. But I genuinely feel that the monetization of a lot of our offerings, of our gifts, of these things that at one time were so freely given, was done on purpose as a distraction. And so one of the most radical things that we can do is reclaim that and hold that up as an example for others. So to be inspired in that way and to share that inspiration, perhaps inspire others to explore what's possible for them. Where can they give more freely? Where can they receive more freely? And I think that's just a really beautiful opportunity for what could truly be possible. Because we've reached the end of how far we can expand and grow in terms of like our earth, right? She can only hold so much of us. And so this will inevitably collapse unless we find a different way. And this feels like a different way. This just feels like a new possibility, a new opportunity for exploring what it means to be in sacred exchange. So looking at this concept of sacred economics as simply tuning into the sacredness of generosity and gratitude, but doing it in such a fundamental way that it subverts, that it completely replaces our need for monetization. So what could it look like to give from that free space? And I don't fully know, but I am so excited to find out. Okay, that's it for this one. Thank you for being part of this and listening if you did to the end. I would love to hear your thoughts or your feelings. Especially if it's something that feels like, oh, I'm willing to try this in this way. You know, the more that we can share our inspired thoughts and feelings, the more that we help to uplift each other. All right, sending you much love and many blessings.